As we begin, I want to take a moment to address something I almost said outside of our 10 commandments, but it's really not. In fact, as we get into commandment number 6, we'll actually address that a little bit. Robin Williams passed away this week, and it created a sensation of sorts in the media. A lot of time, a lot of people talked about him, a lot of tributes to him, the military men and women, very grateful for all the service that he had given to them and the love that he had shown them and the time that he had taken. He would go out there on Christmases, unannounced, not for any glory, but just to be with them and to say thank you, those kind of things. As you know, he committed suicide. He wrestled with depression all his life, was recently diagnosed with Parkinson's, and it just was too much. Regardless of what your opinion is on suicide, always keep in mind that we are God's children, called to be very kind, and called to be the most compassionate and understanding of all people on earth. Someday, we may have an extended time during the sermon, and I'll share with you what I think about suicide. It's not as clear as we like to make it in our bumper sticker world. And what one with depression struggles through is fiercely more emotionally violent than most of us can even imagine. I'm going to jump ahead in the sermon just a minute. You will not murder. Big number 6. Clear, concise, plain. But even in the Jewish law, there is room for intent. And within the rabbis' discussions, 3,000 years ago, 2,500 years ago, there was discussion that those who deal with such a darkness in their life, that fiercely wrestle with it year after year after year, sometimes get to a point where the phrase we use is at wit's end. The rabbis say that murder can only be murder when it is done with one's full wits about them. When the intention is clear, violent, selfish. And that sometimes these moments of desperation, our wits have been lost. I'm not telling anybody that it's okay. I'm saying that we need to be people of compassion. We need to be a shining light in this world, a place of hope and understanding. If you wrestle with depression, please seek help. I speak for many in this room. We will walk this road with you. We will not give up on you. Because God sees you as valuable and wonderful and beautiful. And we do too. There is no stigma associated with reaching out for help, except that you are heroic for doing so. Praise team, I'm going to ask you to pick up your microphones. Everybody else, I'm going to ask you to take out your songbooks. That's that maroon book under the seat in front of you. Turn to page 578. I love the visuals and the graphics, and this is off program, so just relax back there for a minute. She was freaking out going, what's he doing? What's he doing? Was kind of my point. I love that we have that capability, but sometimes having everything so pre-structured seems to take away the Spirit's leading. And I feel a need to focus. That's not the right word. A need to honor God for His love for us and His kindness towards us. And our living kindness towards others. So if you'll turn to page 578, Song 578. And if you wouldn't mind, if you'll dim the lights back there to halfway down or a little bit more, and praise team, if you will lead us in this song. And let's just sing this song reflectively together.
Glorify the King of Kings. We will glorify the Lamb. We will glorify the Lord of Lords, who is the great I am. Lord Jehovah reigns in majesty. We will bow before His throne. We will worship Him in righteousness. We will worship Him alone. He is Lord of heaven, Lord of earth. He is Lord of all who live. He is Lord above the universe. All praise to Him we give. So hallelujah to the King of Kings. Hallelujah to the Lamb. Hallelujah to the Lord of Lords, who is the great I am.
We've sung that song for years. I've sung that song for years. I had no idea how thoroughly biblical it is. But after what we've been studying for the last 3 or 4 months, that thing just nails it, doesn't it? It's just a beautiful, beautiful piece of worship music. Well, we are ready to tackle the practical commandments, but only with the understanding that we have set down with the first 4. And really the first 4 are really encapsulated in the first 1. The first one being, I am the Lord your God. Who brought you out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. You shall have no other gods before me. Let's go ahead and go to that next slide. Commandment, statement, saying number 2, number 3, and even number 4, which is actually a blessing, a gift from God to assist us in truly honoring number 1. All support and reflect this statement from God. He is our Redeemer. He is our rescuer. He brought His people out of a land of slavery. And while Israel was in physical slavery, we were slaves to sin, as Paul says in the New Testament. God rescues us from that. And there is no other God that deserves our time, our attention, our efforts. There is no other idol that deserves those things. There is no other thing in this world, person, place, or object that deserves our time and our attention, our focus and our effort, our commitment, our worship, like Yahweh God, for he is God alone. So with that foundation for life, for all of life, as we talked about in Bible class this morning, Lawrence did a great job. Thank you, Lawrence, so much. It's such a beautiful job of talking about life and how Scripture molds us and makes us and how we should treat it and respect it and love it. These commandments, these statements, these sayings are about more than just spiritual life. It's more than just what happens on Sunday morning. For the true believer, for the Israelite receiving these words from Moses, for us receiving these words today, there is no difference in what we believe about God and what we live out in our daily moments of life. The spiritual life drives and inspires and directs our physical life. That which we value, we live out. And it's so easy in this overly complicated world to get lost on our way. It's one of the reasons why church is so important. We pull ourselves back in. We gather the troops and we refocus. We re-energize. We celebrate and worship the one who is the giver of all good and perfect gifts, including his law, so that we can live it out more fully during the week. We hold each other accountable. We encourage one another to greater works. We are, in a sense, that great cloud of witnesses that Hebrews talks about. Yes, it's talking about David and Moses and Elijah and all those that have gone before that did God's work in his righteousness, lived it out. But it's also talking about us. We are God's witnesses. We cheer one another on. God provides us with that strong foundation to stand on. Now, with that thought in mind, I want to speak for just a moment about what is coming up October the 1st through November the 9th. And that would be 40 days of prayer and fasting. We are at Western Hills incredibly grateful for what God has given us and is doing in us right now. And we choose to move forward and do those things that he is preparing in advance for us to do because we trust that he is preparing us to do them and to do them well. So we want to enter into these 40 days of prayer and fasting to seek his wisdom, to seek his guidance, to seek his lead so that we do that well. We want to discover what he is preparing in us now. Sometimes God is working in us and preparing us, and we don't even know it. But we want to partner with God and say, reveal these things to us so that we might be stronger, so that we might be more deeply committed, so that we might honor you more fully. So we want to discover what he is preparing in us now, and we want to discover what he is preparing in advance for us to do and be. Who does God want us to reach out to? How does God want us to do that? What works is he preparing in advance for us to do? Now again, that 40 days begins October the 1st and will end November the 9th. By the way, that's a Wednesday through a Sunday. It is the second Sunday of the month, so we will break our fast with a potluck together. Now, when I say 40 days of prayer and fasting, we're not all going to fast for 40 days, every one of us. In September, we'll be making the details a little bit more clear, but just as a general overview, we'll have sign-up sheets, and what we want is for someone to volunteer to fast every day of those 40, not every one of those days, but we want someone's name in a slot so that someone from Western Hills is fasting every moment of those 40 days. Hopefully there may even be 2 or 3 on any particular day or on all of the days. And we will have a structured time. Structured is not a good word. We will have prayer themes every 10 days. So that we are all praying for and with the person fasting. We are praying as a body together. Joining in the fasting, whether or not we fast. And there are many types of fasting, and we'll get into that as well. But for those who sign up, they will be signing up for a food fast for 24 hours. And I'm going to encourage you to take more than one day within that 40 days. It's really quite healthy to fast periodically. And not just physically. But like Simba said, when we take care of the physical, we are ready to hear the spiritual. And remember how we talked about hear, O Israel, that the biblical sense of hear is to put a puzzle together and to understand. And so when we purposefully deny ourselves physically, we are opening up our spirit to hear God more fully. The idea with a fast is every time you are hungry, you think about food, you pray about a specific topic. That you allow your hunger, your physical needs, to remind you of your spiritual needs. And it's very effective, I'll tell you. And it's actually quite beautiful. So we will be joining in that together. We'll be using September as a time of rededication and focus and learning what it is to pray and fast in this manner and to seek God in this manner. We'll be focusing our hearts on God and His future for Western Hills and our joining Him in that future. I think it's a very exciting time. I'm really looking forward to this exercise as a family. I think I know God has great things in store. I think He has great things to release. I think He's calling us to join Him. And I believe we are ready. And we're preparing to join Him more fully. Now, in order to get to September and have that time in September to prepare for our 40 days of prayer and fasting, we must tackle, you like how I threw that in, football fans, the remaining 6 sayings or statements or commandments in 2 weeks. Now you say, there are 3 Sundays left in August. You are correct. Twyla and I will be in Pennsylvania next week after having married off our son. Yay. And no, you don't need to clap for that, but yay, we're happy. And so Dr. Jeff Peterson from Ulster Graduate School of Theology will be preaching next week. It's going to be a treat for you guys. And we didn't want to limit him to what we're doing. We wanted to give him the freedom to bring a message from his heart and from his studies. He's a fantastic intellectual, deep-thinking speaker, and it will be a challenge and a joy for you guys to be here, and I will definitely be listening to that CD when I get back. So Jeff is Dr. Peterson is, I just can't do that. Dr. Peterson is preaching next week, and so that leaves us with 2 weeks, today and the 31st, to finish up the 10 Commandments. So let's get cracking. Commandments 5, 6, and 7. Honor your father and mother so that you may live long in the land your God is giving you. You shall not murder. You shall not commit adultery. All right? It means what it says, and it says what it means. Praise team, let's sing. I mean, really, those are really pretty cute, and pretty straightforward. But I tell you that in studying this, I thought, I can do these 3 really easily. I was wrong. I would love to spend 3 weeks on each one. I won't subject you to that. Luckily, Westover has the building at 5 o'clock, so we have to be out before then. Now, I title the sermon 3 Big No-Nos. It's really not accurate, literally. And yet, well, here's why. Because commandment number 5, honor your father and mother so that you may live long in the land the Lord your God is giving you. That's not a negative. That's not a no-no. That's a yes. So what it could be is really, right, one big kano, two big no-nos. So phonetically, three big no-nos works. And since I'm the one preaching and I made the graphics, I get to do it. Didn't go as well as I thought it would. All right, let's move on. Number 5, honor your father and mother so that you may live long in the land the Lord is giving you. We're very familiar with the New Testament quoting of this. Actually happens several times. Jesus quotes it several times. Paul quotes it. It is quoted several times. It's very important. My favorite, well, it's not my favorite quote of it, but what we're going to look at today is Ephesians chapter 6, verses 1 through 4, which is an illustrative point to 5:21. Submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. He talks to the wives, he talks to the husbands, and he talks to the kids. And he talks to the slaves. So this is an illustration of what it looks like to submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. Kids, this one's on you. Children, obey your parents. Ephesians 6. For this is right. Honor your father and mother, which is the first commandment with a promise, that it may go well with you and you may enjoy long life on earth. Now you notice how he changed that up a little bit. He didn't say exactly what it says in Exodus 20, so that you may live long in the land the Lord your God is giving you. He said so that you may enjoy long life on the earth. Why did he do that? Well, again, we don't have time to go into every little thing, but obviously this is a different time, different place. The Jews were living under Roman, as they felt, occupation. And yet, there is a promise of long life. There is a promise associated with honoring your father and mother. There's something so right and so good about it that God blesses it and it makes life better. Because he does say that you may enjoy long life. Not that you will suffer through long life. Not that, be good to your parents so that you'll be miserable for a lot longer. So that you may enjoy long life. You didn't know Paul was a comedian, did you? And I can just hear so many of you thinking, well, if you knew my parents, you know. But I love what Paul does here because he captures the essence of what is intended. Fathers, do not exasperate your children. Instead, bring them up in the training and instruction of the Lord. This commandment is not just for children. I'm sorry. Yes, it is just for children. The point is, we are all children of God. And we are all children even when our parents pass along. Because there are those that are elder among us. Now, if you happen to be the very oldest one here, you'd probably be the first to say, regardless of how old I am, it's one of the things I love about Vivian. I love learning. She's not in spirit. Not in spirit. She's a lot younger than a lot of us in our joints and things too. The mindset of being a child before God helps us to enjoy life on this earth because it brings a richness and a fullness and a purpose and a scope to life that is empowering and invigorating and joyful. Now, we've got to move through these really very, very quickly. So let me just say that this, again, what I love about this Ephesians passage is that it captures what God was trying to get across. This is not an excuse for adults to behave badly towards their children and then demand that they behave honorably towards them. It is also not an excuse for children who have parents who behave badly to say, well, you don't act very honorably, so I don't have to honor you. There are no qualifiers on this commandment. None at all. So even If your parents are ratfinks, you must still honor them. The challenge is on you to get creative and to rise above and to do what is right. In doing what is right, you are a witness for your ultimate Father. That's what makes it right. I have a beautiful, true-to-life story that I can only give you a thumbnail sketch of. When we first moved into town, Kay Aldridge was a part-time secretary at Westlake. Kay had a lot of issues that stemmed from her early childhood. She was violently sexually abused by family members, her father being one of them. As her father's health declined, they lived in California. The family did. Kay and Bruce lived here. They made the purposeful choice. Kay was a nurse by trade, by the way, and then was a stay-at-home mom to be a blessing to her kids and worked part-time at the church. When Dad's health began declining pretty severely, they made the conscious decision to move back to California so that she could take care of her father. Scared me to death. Why put yourself in that situation? Why put yourself in harm's way again? He's never going to apologize. He hasn't yet. You're setting yourself up for abuse. In all honesty, I thought something was wrong with Kay. That she was trying to get something that she would never get closure on. And I spoke very bluntly to her. And she looked at me and she said, the Bible says, honor your father and mother. It doesn't say if they're good. It just says do it. And I trust God, so I'm going to do it. Praise be to God that before he passed away, not much before he passed away, and not until after she had cleaned his soiled garments and his soiled body, because he'd completely lost control of those things 100 or 1,000 times, that he finally say, why are you doing this? You're my father, and God tells me to. And I will honor you because that's what God tells me to. God knows what's right. And he knows what's good. And if we will follow his commandments, his statements, his wisdom, we will enjoy life. This commandment, this statement, this saying is an extension of the respect that we have and the honor that we give for God. It is about trust. Do we trust God to know what is right and what is best, and will we do it? And it flies in the face of so many that have so much problems with their parents. But in all honesty, God says, do it anyway. Because your intent should be to follow God and to submit to him alone. The question is, what controls you? Is it God and his wisdom, or is it your own, my own selfish desires and feelings and application of psychology? And yeah, I said it. Feelings. We far too often in this day and age let feelings guide us. And I have to tell you, feelings are terrible guides. Terrible guides. Or should I say they're terrible gods? I think I will. All right. I could go on number 5 for a long, long time. But suffice it to say, God says to do it. He knows what's best. Sometimes we just do it. Now, many of us are very fortunate to have wonderful parents that make it easy to honor. Don't take advantage of that. And don't let that slip. Be purposeful in your honoring of your parents. It is a good thing to do. One little note of interest, a little Bible trivia. You'll notice that the first statement, I am the Lord your God who brought you out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. You shall have no other gods before me, has that neat explanation to it. I am the Lord your God. Look at how I have served you. And the fifth one says, honor your father and mother so that you may live long in the land the Lord your God is giving you. In both of those, he uses the exact same phrase for the Lord your God. Yahweh, well, I wrote it down here because I don't. Yahweh Ata Elohim. I am the Lord your God. There are purposeful bookends there. You know how sometimes people will say, well, the first greatest commandment that Jesus talked about, love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your soul and all your mind and all your strength, is really kind of a commentary on the first four of the commandments. And the second one, love your neighbor as yourself, is a commentary on the last six. Except that in the structure of this thing, number 5 belongs with number 1 through 4. How you treat your parents is so reflective of who you are before God that it is purposefully notated in the Hebrew by that same phrase being there. And yet it is the perfect transition to the last 5. So it is a very transitional, beautiful statement that says your life with God cannot be separated from your life on this earth with your parents or with other people. You see how that works? The spirit life and the physical life are one and the same for followers of God. And number 5 is the beautiful example and teacher of that. All right, number 6. Flip the page. You shall not commit murder. I love this in the Hebrew. That's literally what it says. Not murder. That's it. Not murder. Okay, got it. Move on. Not quite as clear as that. But it is quite as clear as that. But it's not quite as clear as that. But it really is quite as clear as that. There are more than one word for killing in the Old Testament, in the Hebrew. The word that is used here, rotshach, something like that, means murder, a willful vengeance, a selfish, personal act of violence against one another against another that takes their life. Intent is critically important. Listen to Exodus 22:2, just a couple of chapters later, as other more specific laws are being given. If a thief is caught breaking in and is struck so that he dies, the defender is not guilty of bloodshed. In many, many laws, and again, we just don't have time to go over them all. The intent of the killing is what is significant. Killing in times of war, not considered murder. Self-defense, not considered murder. Accidental killings, not considered murder. The difference is the intent. So with that in mind, and the story of the first murder in mind, Cain killing Abel, listen to Jesus' words in Matthew chapter 5. You have heard that it was said to the people long ago, do not murder, and anyone who murders is subject to judgment. But I tell you that anyone who is angry with his brother will be subject to judgment. Again, anyone who says to his brother, Racha, is answerable to the Sanhedrin, but anyone who says, you fool, will be in danger of the fire of hell. Therefore, if you're offering your gift at the altar, and remember that your brother has something against you, leave your gift in front of the altar. First go and be reconciled to your brother, and then come and offer the gift. Settle matters quickly with your adversary taking you to court. Do it while you are still with him on the way, or he may hand you over to the judge. The judge may hand you over to the officer. You may be thrown into prison. I tell you the truth, you will not get out until you have paid the last penny. Now, what does that have to do with murder? Why did Jesus bring that in there? Because Jesus is a master of understanding the intent of God. After all, he is God. And he explained those things. But it's not as if the Old Testament, what we call the Old Testament, didn't explain those things. In Leviticus chapter 19, verse 16, it says, "Don't go around spreading slander among your people. Don't do anything that endangers your neighbor's life. I am the Lord." The intent has always been the significant thing to God. We do not go after another person with selfish, vengeful, prideful motive. We do not do that. We are God's children. We lift up, we encourage, we submit. We do not attack, verbally or physically. Intent is so important. What controls you is so important. Is our submission to God alone, or is it to our own, to my own, to your own selfish desires and feelings? And yeah, I said it again. Feelings. Feelings are terrible guides, or shall I say, terrible gods. How far away from love your neighbor as yourself is murder? By the way, in Jew speak, that sounds terrible. In Jewish speak, speaking Jewishly, the second greatest commandment is love your fellow as yourself, your fellow human. We are all connected. We are all connected. We should treat one another within these four walls and everywhere else on this planet with great love. Certainly not murder. All right, number 7. You shall not commit adultery. Literally, not adultery. Next slide. There we go. That's it, literally. Now, what's fun is Hebrew is printed right to left. So if you read it left to right, English-wise, but it says adultery not. I just thought that was cute. Okay. Let's go back to Matthew. Jesus taking the 10 Commandments, several of the 10 Commandments, and just expanding upon them beautifully. You have heard that it was said, do not commit adultery. Okay, we know what that means. By the way, adultery doesn't just mean a married person having sex with someone who's not their spouse. It means anything outside of the marriage covenant. You've heard it was said, do not commit adultery. But I tell you that anyone who looks at a woman lustfully has already committed adultery with her in his heart. Now, this demands an explanation of the difference between a temptation and a sin. Temptation is, wow. A sin is, wow. You know what I'd like to do with that woman right there? I would like to da 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 da. Okay? Now, we are to avoid temptation. You got a big Rottweiler who's foaming at the mouth and he's on a chain. You don't inch forward to see how close you can get, right? Stay away. We should do so with temptations. But we cannot avoid all temptations. But we do not play with them either. If your right eye causes you to sin, gouge it out, throw it away. It is better for you to lose one part of your body than your whole body to be thrown into hell. And if your right hand causes you to sin, cut it off and throw it away. It is better for you to lose one part of your body than for your whole body to go into hell. Sage advice from the sagest of advice givers. We know that he's speaking hyperbolically, right? Else, we would all have seeing eye dogs with us. And ladies, don't point the finger. You are just as guilty as us gentlemen, 50 Shades of Grey is proving that so very true. And moving on. God is deadly serious about this stuff. What we allow ourselves to think about, what we allow ourselves to dwell on. That's why the pornography on the internet is so destructive. That's why it's so insidious and so hurtful. We are inviting Satan into our souls when we participate. And he tears us away from our great God, the one who is God alone. Our number one is God. He is the one who freed us. He is the one who redeemed us. He is the one that has given us good life. Not our own wants and desires and selfish nature. We have committed to honor and serve Him, and so not to adulterate, which, by the way, means to make impure. We're not to adulterate His holy name. And that's exactly what adultery does. Intent is important. Keep your mind pure, purposefully. Because that which we think about controls us. And the only thing that should control us is submission to God alone. Not our own thoughts, our own selfish desires, or our own feelings. Because feelings are terrible guides, or should we say terrible gods. Phew. All right, so we just covered number 5 through number 7. Well, I was shooting for 15 minutes. Close. Overall, what's the point? Let's wrap up very quickly. The big idea is trusting in God's wisdom to guide our lives. If number 1 is really number 1, you probably can't read that, can you? Can you read it? Okay, good. For those of you that may be having a hard time reading it, on the galvanized fence there it says, "May your life preach more loudly than your lips," which is a great thought in terms of following God and submitting to God. Our lives should be the invitation for people to seek His beauty and His wisdom because they see the joy that we have because we have followed the commandments and we are enjoying good life. If number 1, if commandment, if statement, if saying number 1 is really number 1, if we can really say, "You are Yahweh, our Elohim, our God," then God and His wisdom will direct our paths. Psalm 119, 105, "Your word is a lamp to my feet, a light to my path." Psalm 23, verse 3, "He guides me in the paths of righteousness for His name's sake." Let God direct your path, my path, our path, not our feelings. Let God be the one who controls us. May we submit to God and God alone and fight against our own selfish desires and feelings. Yes, I said it. God alone. He is an awesome guide. Or should I say, He is an awesome God for life, good life, real life. It is time that we get serious about what we do, yes, and about what we choose to think about, and about who is really number 1. Let's work hard to follow Him purely and bring honor, and I mean real honor, to His name by following Him with all our heart, with all our soul, with all our mind, and with all our strength. Commandments 5 through 7. So practical, so rich, so good. May we follow them with joy. If you have a need, a spiritual need of any kind, we're going to stand and sing this song of invitation, and we invite you to come forward. We would love to pray with you. We would love to have you join the family here, and if it's time for you to meet Jesus in baptism, the waters are warm and ready. Let's stand and sing this song of invitation.
My stubborn wit, 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 my